The unraveling of a double life. My name's Tessa, and for over 7 years, I thought I'd carved out a perfect little existence with my boyfriend in our foggy coastal town, where the air smells of salt and the waves crash like a heartbeat. We were the couple everyone envied, high school sweethearts who'd weathered teenage drama, late-night fights, and the slow grind of growing up, only to settle into a rhythm of quiet mornings over coffee and windswept walks along the cliffs. I thought I knew him inside out, his crooked smile, the way he'd hum off-key to old rock songs, the promises he'd murmur about our future under a blanket of stars. But one stormy night, that illusion started to fray, and by the time I was done, I'd unravel his lies, hunt down every secret, and leave his world in ruins. This is my story, a tale of betrayal, revenge, and the fire I didn't know I had. Grab a snack, because this one's long and twisted. It all kicked off with a flicker of unease. One October evening in 2024, rain hammered our roof, wind rattling the windows, and his phone buzzed on the nightstand while he showered. I'd never been one to snoop, 7 years of trust had dulled my edges, but the screen glowed with a message about counting down to Charleston. Charleston? My stomach lurched. He'd been griping for weeks about a work trip to Boise, some tedious sales conference he'd painted as a chore. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself it was nothing, a friend's joke, a typo. But the next morning, while he snored under our quilt, I slipped my hand into his coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled plane ticket, Astoria to Charleston, South Carolina, dated 2 weeks out. My fingers trembled as I stared at it, the ink blurring in my vision. Why lie about something so mundane? I didn't storm into the bedroom to shake him awake. He was too slick, too quick with excuses. I needed more than a hunch, I needed proof. So I swallowed the doubt and turned into a ghost, haunting his life for the truth. The next week, I became a stranger to myself, moving silently through our house, waiting for my chance. He left for work one gray morning, and I pounced on his laptop, abandoned on the kitchen table, its screen still warm. What I found wasn't just a crack, it was a canyon splitting my world apart. Emails to the other girls spilled across the display, her words bright and sharp, gushing about their future, a venue booked for November 10th. My chest tightened. That was 10 days away. Then I uncovered the real wound, a digital wedding invitation, his name linked with hers, set for Charleston. My boyfriend, the man I'd given 7 years of my life to, was planning to marry someone else. Every night, he'd come home to me, toss his keys on the counter, wrap me in a hug that smelled of his cologne, and lie through his teeth. This wasn't a fling gone wrong, it was a calculated betrayal, months in the making. I scrolled further, finding photos, itineraries, a whole life he'd built while I slept beside him, blind and trusting. Sickness churned in my gut, but the final blow came from a casual line in her email, "Can't wait to leave Astoria behind." He wasn't just cheating, he was planning to vanish. I could have exploded, screamed until my voice gave out, shattered every glass in our cupboard, dragged his clothes to the shore and let the tide claim them. But something colder settled in, a steel thread weaving through my rage. If he thought he could bury me in his lies and skip off to his new chapter, he was about to meet a Tessa he'd never imagined. I wasn't going to crumble, I was going to dismantle him, piece by piece. First, I targeted his foundation. He wasn't just a liar, he was reckless, cocky. His job at that tech company fed his ego, and I'd seen the shadows beneath the shine. Late nights, he'd sprawl across our couch, a beard dangling from his hand, boasting about how he'd fudge sales figures, skim bonuses, tweak reports to impress the higher-ups. I'd rolled my eyes back then, teasing him about his rebel streak, never thinking I'd weaponize it. Now, those brags were my ammunition. I locked myself in our spare room, the one we'd once dreamed of turning into a nursery, and combed through years of emails he'd sent me, offhand messages with screenshots of his wins, proof of his shady tricks. I spent hours stitching it together, my eyes burning from the screen's glare, until I had an airtight file, dates, numbers, evidence of his creative accounting. Then I sent it off, an anonymous tip to his company's ethics hotline. "Check his records, he's been stealing from you." My heart thudded as I hit send, a mix of fear and thrill coursing through me. For days later, he staggered through our door, his face ashen, eyes wild. They'd fired him, booted him out with no warning, security escorting him past his stunned coworkers. He paced our living room, hardwood creaking under his frantic steps, ranting about how someone had stabbed him in the back. The irony was so thick I nearly choked on it. I played the part of the loyal girlfriend, brewing him chamomile tea, resting a hand on his arm, murmuring soft reassurances while inside, I smirked. He had no clue I'd been the one to light the fuse. But that was just the beginning. His laptop held darker secrets, and I'd found a hidden folder labeled SC Plans, South Carolina, I realized with a jolt. Inside were bank statements, joint accounts with the other girl, swollen with money from a loan we'd taken together. $30,000 for a boat we'd supposedly bought last summer, a fantasy he'd spun about lazy days on the water. I'd poured most of my savings into it, trusting his breezy, we'll split it later, promises, too smitten to question him. Now, I saw the truth, he'd funneled it into his escape plan. Rage simmered under my skin, but I kept it caged. I wasn't done yet. Next, I reached out to my cousin, a paralegal with a knack for legal traps. I told her I needed help, no details, and she didn't pry, just rolled up her sleeves. We spent a late night drafting a demand letter. He had 30 days to repay his half of the loan, or I'd haul him to court. I chose my moment carefully, waiting until he was slumped at our kitchen table, nursing a coffee after another fruitless job hunt. I slid the letter across the wood, watching his eyes widen, his jaw slacken. He stammered about his unemployment, how he couldn't pay, but I stood firm, arms crossed, voice flat. He'd signed the papers, and I wasn't his lifeline anymore. He begged, his hands shaking, but my cousin had locked the terms tight. He was trapped, flailing for cash he didn't have, and I savored every second of his panic. Then came a twist I hadn't seen coming. 2 days later, a knock jolted me from my thoughts. I opened the door to a petite blonde with a soft southern drawl, the other girl. She stood on my porch, wind tugging at her hair, asking if he was home. My pulse roared, but I kept my face calm, inviting her in for coffee. She hesitated, then stepped inside, clutching a sleek purse, her eyes darting around our living room, my living room. Over steaming mugs, she spilled her story. They'd married in Charleston a week ago. He'd told her I was an ex, a faded memory from years past. I nodded, sipping my drink, letting her unravel her fairy tale while my mind raced. She had no idea I was still in the picture. I waited for an opening, then slid my phone across the table, screenshots of his texts to me, time-stamped days after their wedding. Her face collapsed, confusion giving way to horror. She whispered something about how he'd sworn I was long gone. I leaned in, voice steady, and told her he was still living here, sleeping in my bed. She lurched to her feet, tears spilling, and fled out the door, her heels clicking on the pavement. I didn't follow. Let her confront him, let the chaos ignite. That night, he burst in, frantic, hair disheveled, demanding to know what I'd done. The other girl had called him, screaming, and he was unraveling. I shrugged, cool and detached, telling him I'd just shared the truth. He snatched his keys, muttering about salvaging it, but I had one more card to play. I told him to check his email, my tone slicing through the air. He fumbled with his phone, and his face went white. I'd sent another anonymous tip, this time to the other girl's father, a wealthy real estate tycoon I'd pieced together from her emails. I dug deeper into his old texts, unearthing photos of him with a third woman, a fling he'd juggled on the side. I'd packaged it all, proof of his triple life, and sent it off. If her dad was half as protective as he seemed, my boyfriend was in for a reckoning. The next morning, my phone pinged with a text from the other girl. She'd thrown him out, and her father had cut him off too. He'd been funding my boyfriend's half-baked business ventures, a detail I hadn't even known. I stared at the words, a slow, fierce grin spreading. His empire of lies was crumbling, and I'd helped shove it over the edge. But the real shock landed a week later. A package arrived, heavy in my hands, with a handwritten note from the other girl. She'd found something in his belongings, she wrote, and thought I deserved it. Tucked inside was a bank statement, $15,000 transferred to an account in my name. His secret stash, redirected by the wife he'd betrayed. I laughed, a raw, victorious sound that bounced off the walls of our now quiet house. He'd lost everything, his job, his money, his women, and we'd split the spoils like pirates after a raid. There was one last thread, though, a subplot I'd stumbled into while digging. Months back, he'd bragged about a side hustle, some consulting gig he'd kept vague. I'd found receipts in his desk, payments from a shady outfit tied to a local bar owner, a guy with a reputation for bending laws. I'd hesitated, unsure how to use it, but after the other girl's visit, inspiration struck. I mailed the receipts anonymously to the bar owner, hinting my boyfriend had been skimming from him too. 2 days later, I saw him at the pier, bruised and limping, eyes darting like a hunted animal. I didn't ask questions, just watched from a distance, knowing I'd landed one final blow. He took 7 years of my life, wove a labyrinth of deceit, and thought he'd slip away unscathed. I didn't just walk away, I torched his world. His career's ash, his finances are dust, his marriage is a ghost. Some might call me ruthless, say I shouldn't have played executioner. But when I learned he'd juggled me, the other girl, a third fling, and who knows what else, I stopped caring about fair. I reclaimed my power, my peace, and left him with nothing but the wreckage he'd earned. So, what's your take? Was I the villain or the victor? Did he deserve the storm I unleashed, or did I cross a line? Drop your thoughts below, I'm braced for the heat.
Holy crap, you're a badass. You didn't just dump him, you buried him. Absolute queen move. He had it coming.
Did you ever think about just walking away instead of playing puppet master?
This is wild. He's a jerk for sure, but you turned it into a revenge saga. Can't decide if I'm impressed or freaked out.